3, 2, 1. Here's the latest from the National Hurricane Center and all the other data that we're gathering. We're going to highly focus, of course, on Idalia. That's what we're told to pronounce it, Idalia. Franklin is out there, but remember, Franklin is going to miss us by over 600 miles. Idalia will impact us and eventually as a hurricane. For now, a tropical storm. Here's the center. You may say, well, why do you say the center's there where all of this color indicating the thunderstorm? So you might think there. But what we're really looking for, and one of the reasons the hurricane hunters head out there, is so that we can find the circulation center. And the circulation center is right here. Remember, this is just barely a tropical storm, so we don't expect a symmetrical system yet. There's what we call northwesterly shear. That is, overall, as the thunderstorms try to build, the winds out of the west and northwest up at about 20 to 30,000 feet are tending to blow the tops off, whereas off to the east, southeast, south, and southwest of the circulation center, those thunderstorms can build. One of the reasons why we think this will intensify into at least a Cat 1 and probably more is because as we go through the next several days, the shear will diminish. Remember, shear is our friend. We want shear, but the shear will diminish. The system will therefore intensify, and that trend, unfortunately, will probably continue right up until landfall. So here's the official forecast. And these official forecasts come in every 6 hours. We'll be getting new data from hurricane hunters, satellite radar, new computer models, at least every 3 hours, sometimes even more frequently. So we'll be sharing that with you. But overall, the song remains the same, pretty much what we've been talking about really since last Wednesday and Thursday, although we just started with the official cone as of yesterday. And notice, well, I'll tell you what, I'll zoom on in, and as we do so, the last number you see now is 90 miles per hour. That's getting on the threshold of Category 1 to 2. And the reason I bring that up is as Idalia becomes a hurricane, probably somewhere west-southwest of Tampa, it will be intensifying all the way until it makes landfall. At least that's how it looks. Remember, the cone shows you not where the worst of the weather will necessarily be. There'll probably be more stormy weather right of the track versus to the west. This shows you the core of uncertainty. So even with the hurricane here, that's Wednesday, 3 days away, it's almost as likely it could make landfall in the Clearwater area and then also near Apalachicola. Although notice the cone is narrower the closer to impact, and that's because, well, the forecast gets better, right, as we get closer to the actual time. All right, so there it is. There's Idalia. There's the zoom in. And this is Wednesday, so I wanted to show you the first coast. Of course, Jacksonville metropolitan area, Lake City is right there. Waycross is right here. And so this will be impacting our area. It could be stronger than a Cat 1, could possibly be a 2. We can't rule out this becoming a major hurricane. Depends just how much the shear will diminish. And, well, we know the waters are warm. We know the waters are at record level. And those are the two main ingredients. So what's it mean for us here on the first coast? Well, first of all, again, we have days to get ready for this. We're going to call it a hurricane because it will become a hurricane. We have days to get ready for the hurricane. The stormiest day is going to be Wednesday. Now, even though Lake City is inland, and although the hurricane will weaken once it makes landfall, I would still plan for those of you in Lake City and the Columbia County area to plan on Category 1 hurricane conditions. For the rest of us, that is in the Jax metro area, generally speaking, winds at least strong enough for power outages, and there will be some isolated tornadoes. And of course, an isolated tornado can cause some damage. Now, as we go through the next couple of days, we're going to break the impact forecast down for your county, and we'll have county by county forecast as we get closer. Just wanted to put things in perspective as far as Franklin continues to intensify. It's now up to a Category 2 hurricane. We think it's going to become at least a Category 3, so the first major hurricane of the year, but with complete confidence, although it looks like it's going this way, it's going to make the turn. This is 600 miles, by the way. These are longitudinal lines. This is 70 degrees west, 80 degrees west. Generally speaking, that's about 600 miles every 10-degree shift. Same thing, this is 20 degrees north, 30 degrees north, about 600, and we're going to talk Navy talk here, but 600 nautical miles from north to south. And so that's why we can say that this developing hurricane is still over 600 miles south-southwest of us. But again, we're focusing on Idalia because with complete confidence, this hurricane, major hurricane, Franklin, Going to become a 3, could become a 4, will turn after it passes 600 miles off to our east. There's Bermuda. Going to be a close call for Bermuda, although it looks like at least Bermuda will miss the eye wall. Okay, let's get back to Idalia. Let's compare the two. So there goes Franklin, and notice how Idalia becomes larger. These are the storm force winds. The deeper color being winds of at least 50 miles per hour or more. That's wind damage. Notice how that expands and the whole system becomes more symmetrical. So this is for Wednesday morning. And so there is the eye, or the presentation of the eye of Franklin. Here would be the developing eye, and unfortunately the eye wall. And of course the eye wall is where exponentially there is more damage. That is the eye wall, and that is right there. Now, I do want to note that certainly for those living on the Gulf Coast, every 10-mile shift in the forecast is going to make a big difference. If you remember, that happened with Ian. And of course, we're going to watch those 10-mile shifts. But for us, since we're not worried about the storm surge coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, although we'll have some rise from the Atlantic, a shift for the rest of us, that is for the Jacksonville metropolitan area, 5 to 10 miles won't matter so much, 30 to 50, that'll matter. So just exactly where landfall will be is, of course, significant. There's a lot of things we're looking at in meteorology. For intensity, we're primarily looking at water temperature, we know that, and then we're also looking at what the shear will be like. Well, some of the shear is dependent upon certainly what the winds are like at 20 to 30,000 feet, which is constantly shifting, but the shear is also dependent upon just how fast and the direction in which the hurricane is actually moving. In other words, you could have 20-mile-per-hour winds blowing over the top. As long as the hurricane is moving at that same speed, then it won't notice the shear, if that makes sense. If you have 20 miles per hour on top of you and the hurricane's not moving, then it would feel 20 miles per hour of shear, and that would knock over the tops. That's why not only knowing what's happening at 20 to 30,000 feet, but then how and what is the hurricane doing relative to those winds, that's also what we mean by shear. So there's a lot of things we're looking at. We talked about this yesterday, but this is a short wave or a ripple, and it's dropping to the south. And the speed with which it drops to the south will define what happens here. Think of it kind of like a seesaw. As this drops to the south, the shear lifts, comes out of the southwest, and it decreases. Well, if it's coming out of the southwest at 30,000 feet, 20,000 feet, and then Idalia is moving from southwest to northeast, then not only is the shear actually decreasing, but then also the shear that it feels is decreasing, and that's not good. That's why we expect intensification. Also, the faster this shortwave, this ripple drops to the south, then a little farther to the west, Idalia can probably go. Or you can look at it on the other side of the coin. The slower this drops to the south, the more shear there will be, and the more that Idalia will come off to the east. That's why there's still a decent chance Idalia could make landfall near Cedar Key, but then also possibly as far to the west as Apalachicola, but it still looks like right in between the two. This is Appalachia Bay. Now, the good news is for us, there are not large population centers here, but still there are folks with businesses and property and even some homes here. But then you can see why, well, places like Lake City, even Gainesville for that matter. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if the classes are canceled for those in Gainesville and Tallahassee, talking about, of course, the Gators and the Knolls and other schools in those areas. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of meteorology. Let's come back home. What's it all mean? I don't expect any watches or warnings for our counties until Monday. And some of these will be hurricane watches and warnings. Some will be tropical storm watches and warnings. So it's going to vary depending on where you are, what county you are in. So we will, of course, be passing that on to you. But that's another way of saying I think we'll be able to make more specific decisions, and people like businesses and schools will be able to make more specific decisions once those watches and warnings are out, and I think that's going to come out on Monday. Now, Tuesday, weather-wise, still a relatively nice start. So through sunset Tuesday even, we'll have plenty of time to prepare for whatever type of weather is going to happen in your area. So again, there's no reason to panic here. I would still, well, use Sunday as your day of rest, if that's what it is for you, and then watch what's happening with the watches and warnings on Monday, and then have everything done by sunset on Tuesday. as an average for where a majority of us live, that would be the Jacksonville metropolitan area, I would expect gusts to 60 or plus, and that's enough for power outages. But I think that's going to be more of a concern than any type of major tidal flooding. There'll be some minor tidal flooding, but major. The exceptions for that will be for those of you over southeastern Georgia. So there it is. There's the forecast. It will be adjusted, but bottom line, well, this is what we can expect, and this is why we call it the Big Three. So I'll say it again, stormiest weather on Wednesday, at least Cat 1 conditions for those of you in and around Lake City. For the rest of us, plan on at least power outages and isolated tornadoes. And please check in, because there will be adjustments with this forecast, and we'll have updates on the forecast, and we'll have these longer discussions for you and with you through at least late Wednesday.